Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Featuring sound effects and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. The Aces of the New Republic have one final chance to defeat the darkness of Shadow Wing in Victory's Price by Alexander Freed, the thrilling conclusion to the Star Wars Alphabet Squadron trilogy. Available now wherever audiobooks are sold.
This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi show number 402. This is your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of my Boba's Beans black and green coffee mug, thrilled to be talking Star Wars with each and every one of you. On today's show, Greg McLaughlin of the Rebel Base Card and Tom Gross from the CWK Alliance join me to talk about Topps and Star Wars and the history of this great collectible that's been with us really since the beginning of Star Wars and collecting. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee are two guests who are experts in this particular field of Star Wars lore, collecting, and excitement. First, we're going to bring in returning guest from the Rebel Base Card, Greg McLaughlin. Greg, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. You keep setting me up. I'm like, man, I better bring the goods.
I
have my coffee.
Your resume was good. All your references came in very well. So, yes, it's great. Now, the other guy we're not as sure about, but we're going to give him a shot anyway. He is, of course, the sometimes CWK newsman, always the man with the golden laugh, Mr. Tom Gross.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Yeah, to put the word expert in front of me might be a stretch, but definitely a fan of our topic tonight. That is no doubt.
Well, then, to me, an expert, it would be defined through this is someone who has an extensive history with it, has a number of stories, collections, and understands and can speak the language. And I think you both are very familiar with this. We are, of course, talking about Topps cards, specifically Topps cards in the Star Wars universe for Star Wars collecting. So, Greg, I'm going to start with you on this. Do you have a story for us about how Topps and Lucasfilms first started working together for the original film?
Well, it's interesting, and I had to kind of go back through in preparation for tonight. I felt like I was cramming for a test. But it's interesting that Topps had kind of already been doing some entertainment cards in the mid-'70s. They had come out with King Kong, if you remember, in '76.
Oh, I have some of those.
I had some at one point, really great cards, but they didn't really sell well. And then they, on the kind of the sci-fi front, they had really tried with this sort of retro Star Trek series, and it didn't do well at all either. And so when Lucasfilm, and we all kind of know, with the story with the merchandising in Lucasfilm, they were shopping around the licenses. They initially went to Topps based off of their track record, with some sci-fi. They kind of turned it down. And something I'd kind of forgotten until I went back and kind of looked at it is that Kenner apparently was the parent company for Donruss. And after Kenner got got on board with the action figures, at that point then Donruss had first rights to kind of take a crack at trading cards, but they turned it down. And so, and I think by this time, Topps was kind of realizing the mistake that they had made and was really wanting another crack at it. And thankfully, Donruss, said no. And so Topps, was able to get onto it, and, they knew they had something right there. And it's kind of funny when you see, and one of the things I'll keep referring back to, and, really I need to get on the payroll for Abrams books, but the Abrams books that they do, one on each of the major series, amongst other ones, Gary Girani, who worked at Topps at the time and was key on those sets. It's a great resource, and just listening to his anecdotes talk about creating the what we now think is the iconic blue Starfield, that first set, talking about like, picking the color. Like, yeah, I think that blue is it, but we need to add some pop to it. So let's just get some flecks on there. We'll, do some little stars and moons and whatnot. And, the rest they say is history. But over the next 2 years, they just couldn't print enough of them. And, and then you can kind of see where they go on later on down the line. But it's always kind of fun to look back, and you kind of pick up some things here and there going back, and sometimes you just kind of have to take a step back and go, I can't believe, some of the things that fall, in and out of their favor, but here we are.
Here we are indeed. Tom, you, one of the things that I thought was the most fun about taking you to Rancho Obi-Wan a couple of years ago is showing you how Steve Sansweet has his Star Wars Topps collection displayed, and you do a similar thing. So we're going to talk about that, but I wanted you to talk about your earliest memories of first starting to buy these packs of cards for the original film.
Oh man, yeah. So I have to say, I've got my binder here next to me, and for the first time in years, I slipped one of the cards out, and I'm holding it in my hand right now. It's these little cardboard these cards are so different than by today's standards, because it still has that like papery back to it. And the one I'm holding apparently was up against the gum, because it's got the gum residue on the back. And it's not even an even cut. There's a slight angle to the photo. I'm holding card 52 of the blue Starfield that Greg was just talking about. But when I go back to my first memories, it goes clear back to, I think I bought some of these cards before the movie even came out, if that was possible. Because I remember being at the drugstore. Can you imagine calling it that anymore? There it is. That's the one. Yes. And I remember being at the drugstore where they had baseball cards and probably had some of those King Kong cards and different things. And I remember seeing Star Wars cards in those packs. And I remember I was with my dad, and he said, well, is there something here you want? Because I was just standing there looking at them. And I said, yeah. And I grabbed, a handful of those. And I said, can I get these? And he's like, just hand them to me. And he bought them. And I'll never forget going home and popping those open and sticking gum, that terrible, awful, wonderful gum in my mouth, and flipping through these cards like, this is the best thing ever. And just, I don't know. I can't place, again, like I said, whether it's before the film or after the film that I got these, but just flipping through them and my imagination going crazy, because I'd gotten some baseball cards. My brother and I kind of collected baseball cards together. And so these were very different, because, these aren't sports cards. There's not a player on these. There's not a name of anybody. Well, there were names, but I didn't know who any of them were. And, spaceships and everything, and it just looked like so much fun. And I remember those memories and want to go back and realizing, hey, these have numbers just like my baseball cards do. And so there's an order to them, and finding on the backs of some of these cards are puzzle pieces. And it was really sort of magical. And I don't know, there's a part of me that's like, am I just glorifying, am I romanticizing this? But as I'm holding this card in my hand, I really don't think I am. I think I was really mesmerized by these as a kid. And I remember my parents being like, oh, okay, how many more of these cards are you going to buy? Because I remember just asking for them constantly when I went to the drugstore, Schuler's drugstore down on Main Street of Oswego, where I grew up. And, it's just, they were just great. And before I knew it, I had a pretty decent collection, and I kept them in an old cigar box. And I packed them in rubber bands and would take them to school and trade them with my friends. So I took them to school, and I remember my first grade teacher, Mrs. Squire, saw them I was like trying to hide them, and I thought I was in trouble. She goes, what's in your desk there? And I took out can you believe I took a cigar box to school? I took out the cigar box, and I opened, I said, there are Star Wars cards in here. And she goes, I'd like you to stay in for recess today. And I was like, oh boy, I'm in big trouble now. And so the kids went out for recess, and I walked over, and I knew I was in trouble. And she goes, let me see your Star Wars cards. And I showed them to her, and she goes, why don't you bring them back tomorrow, and I'll bring mine, and we can trade.
Nice.
It's wonderful.
Oh my God. Can I tell you, my credibility, or my thought and credibility of my teacher went skyrocketing when she said, I was like, you want me to bring these back and you'll trade with me? And I remember my mom's like, no, that can't be right. My mom called the school, and sure enough, she said, yeah, have them bring the cards back. I've got some and I'll trade with them. I mean, she was not a young teacher, I'm just going to say. But we sat there and traded Star Wars cards the next day at recess. And I just thought that was so, so awesome.
It's
So,
fantastic.
so I just, these Star Wars cards and just trading cards in general have been a love of mine. And I'm by no means an expert, unless I go with your definition, Dan, where, yeah, I have a long history of them. I've got stories with them. And the trading has gone all the way from first grade with my teacher, Mrs. Squire, and my friends in first grade, clear to the Joliet Star Wars day when Greg and I sat down and traded cards in the library at the Joliet Star Wars day.
There's so much to love about that, because these cards tell a story, and they allow us to tell our own stories about how we brought them into our lives. To me, some of the greatest appeal about these cards, especially the early stuff, is certainly as Star Wars was rapidly becoming a merchandising and popular culture phenomenon, we gravitated towards images, and we couldn't look them up on the internet because the internet wasn't a thing then. So
Yeah.
you had the Star Wars storybook, you had a couple of books here and there, but there wasn't a ton. But through Topps, you're able to get so many incredible, stunning images of the characters, of the scenes, of the explosions, of the moments, and they kind of stuck in your head. And while I don't have necessarily a memory of the first time I got a Star Wars deck, I know very well getting the Empire Strikes Back ones. Just so captivated by kind of the white and silver of them, and seeing the one of Han Solo, which standing in the Falcon real casually, which that scene doesn't even take place in the movie, but that was kind of the fun too, where you could see images of the making of these films, or just scenes that ended up getting cut on the editing floor and not making it all the way to the big screen. But it didn't matter. The Topps is a bunch of cards of Biggs talking to Luke on Tatooine, and that doesn't happen, obviously, in the film. There's just so many wonderful things like that. I remember being at my grandmother's house in Pontiac, Illinois, and we were looking at, we would always go to these drugstores, and we would always buy decks of these cards, and we get home and we'd thumb through them, and I would get doubles, and I was never discouraged by getting doubles because it just meant I had more of them and I could trade with my brother, or just have them in case I lost one. At least that was my thought process at the time. But there were certain ones, whenever there were ones with the bounty hunters or Boba Fett, who was still such an enigma at the time, you just felt yourself being taken back to the movie theater. You could almost smell the popcorn and taste the butter while you're looking through these cards. And it was just much like the action figures. It really brought you to the experience of living that movie. So, Greg, undoubtedly, you've got some great memories of first collecting these cards as well.
My town was even smaller than Tom's, whereas I think our population is around 1,200 in Frazeysburg, and we had one traffic light and a pharmacy that sold a little bit of everything: magazines, comic books, drugs. It's kind of like your 7-Eleven, but they also sold trading cards, and we all try to do the forensics of when we kind of started, but the movie had already must have come out. We saw it late. Like I said, Dan, you and I kind of both saw it for the first time at a drive-in. And I had a little bit of the blue series 1. There were 5 in total for the original. But it looks to me, when I remember my original collection, I had more yellows. I had just some blue series 1, some red, but really the yellow, that third series. So that must have been really when
Can you
it kicked
explain
in.
that for people who don't know what that is, by the way?
Oh, on the series? Of course.
Yeah.
So, Topps, like I said, they were able to get the license and do that first printing, and those really sold well. That the original blue Starfield one that everyone kind of sees. And so when Topps realized they had a hit on their hand, they just kept making series, and there were 5 in total that they made and put out between 77 and 78. And so each set of these cards were 66 cards and 11 stickers. And I think within the pack, now I'm looking at it, I want to say that they had, was it 12? I should know this. If I can look.
For
It's like
some
about
reason,
12.
Number 8 pops into my brain, but that doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, 8 or 9, and then let's see. Oh, now they're not going to do it in here. Anyway, but yeah, you're talking about around 10, 11 cards with a sticker in it. And I think now if you had if there was 36 packs to a box, and I think I came up with the math one time, and if you would have had $5, you would have walked home with a box that's now worth a lot of money if you would have kept that seal. But no kid, the reason why they're worth so much money is no kid in their right mind would have done that. But at any rate, so when I look back at the series is in order, they're blue, red, yellow, and then green, and then the last one being the orange, which had all the cool behind the scenes ones. So yeah, Topps just was basically printing money for a couple years, I think, until it just kind of dried up a little bit. And then, and if you really want to get down in the weeds about it, they come out with the sugar-free gum that has the card basically as part of the sticker wrapper, which if you had a few of those, you would have also a lot of money. And something I also read in the book, I think in 79, there was still collectors were trying to go back and get the originals. And so they did these uncut sheets. And those are also worth a lot of money as well. So, I mean, that kind of runs you right up until The Empire Strikes Back. So, I think Topps is known for baseball, but in this case, I think as far as the entertainment sets are concerned, this had to be one of their biggest hits as far as entertainment was concerned. But yeah, I remember just collecting those, and and then also you throw in there the Wonder Bread cards, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Which were done by Topps, but they didn't put their logo on it or anything like that. And famously, they put them in the loaves of bread, unprotected. And I had 8 Princess Leia's right up until a couple of years ago.
I got a trading card from Cheerios, a box of Cheerios. I don't know if Topps made those as well. They probably did. But I remember. Do you know what I'm talking about with those?
Now, there is a General Mills set that I do not have yet. That is around 1978, and it's been one of those that it could be around that time. If you are the baseball card follower, you do know that also, Hostess. Remember also Hostess put out I think in a box of Twinkies, they had the 3 cards. You cut them out.
Yep.
But yeah, I want to say the General Mills is probably the cereal ones you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And there was an offer. I think if I forget what the offer is, but they would actually send you all the cards, and there was a little wallet that they would send, which I think is going to probably be one of those things I gift myself. Go get that.
I remember walking out of my grandma's farmhouse, and I just opened up this box of Cheerios, and I found the card. And it was a picture, I think, of Luke in the Falcon, perhaps either in the cockpit or behind the actual one of the guns themselves when they're escaping the Death Star. And I walked out holding it in my hand, and it was just so exciting. And the gust of wind hit, and it went flying across this massive 2 acres. And I ran and ran. I think I was just a little kid. Ran across the farm, and I caught it and grabbed it. And I was so relieved because, come on, that's a Star Wars collectible. There's just a lot of memories. Do either of you remember, from your lives, of course, you had other people that collected too, and you traded with them. But what was the overall reaction nationwide to these cards? Were they a huge hit? I mean, I'm assuming they must have been.
I don't. You know what? I have no idea. Greg, do you know what the reaction was?
Fan reaction, it must have been high because once again, Topps went through 5 sets of these over a course of a couple of years. And, if you think, to me, I think, if you think 76, King Kong, some of these, Topps doing, Close Encounters of the Third Kind or doing Star Trek, some of these things, even the, if you remember the Mars Attacks, some of these weren't necessarily big hits. Or if you remember Topps doing things like The Incredible Hulk or Three's Company, they're trying to get all this stuff. And I'm assuming, some of this, I think they did Grease. Some of these probably sold okay, but I don't think anything on the magnitude of Star Wars. But then again, who knew, for sure, I think both Topps and Kenner were thanking themselves for at least getting in. We know Kenner doesn't come around, comes in, but doesn't get those toys out right away. But I think you put Star Wars on anything in those 3 years between the release and Empire, and the kids were going to gobble it up. And I certainly was, pestering my folks to get me what I can. But that's just, and I think, Dan, you talk about, I love the story about the experience with the Empire Strikes Back cards, because when you get to that first set in 1980, here's a company that really, is flexing its muscles as far as these cards, because now you get a title card, you get checklists, you get these inserts, those Ralph McQuarrie inserts. And, that set now is more than double. I think it's 132 cards at that point. So, for me, when I look back at that Empire Strikes Back set, that first one, you're really looking at a high watermark for the vintage series, because it's just really tops it at the top of their game, as it were. And that set's a beautiful set as well. They all are in their own ways.
Yes.
I think only the Return of the Jedi, the second series, was something where it was they're kind of on the way out, and that set gets a little dark. But that whole Empire run, and Tom was nice enough to come on when we did our shows celebrating the Empire Strikes Back cards last year, their 40th anniversary.
Fun. Yeah.
It was a great show, and it was great to reminisce about those sets and give those their due.
The checklist was something that was absolute gold, because I would have one at the ready all the time, every time I would open a pack. And the McQuarrie stuff started to kind of open your eyes to concept art and how much of a heavy impact Ralph McQuarrie had. In fact, I attribute my love of Ralph McQuarrie to those Topps cards. Now that you mentioned that, Greg, there's a lot of great stuff. And we're not done, folks. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Greg and Tom and I will talk about what it's like to collect Topps Star Wars digital trading cards and the state of the actual physical card collection in this time period. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books but can't find the time? Try listening to them on audio, featuring sound effects, top-notch narrators, and music directly from the movies. Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. The Aces of the New Republic have one final chance to defeat the darkness of Shadowwing in Victory's Price by Alexander Freed, the thrilling conclusion to the Star Wars Alphabet Squadron trilogy. Visit penguinrandomhouse.com/coffeewithkenobi to listen to clips and find your next listen, or buy now wherever books and audiobooks are sold. Once you are ready to plan that vacation, whether it's to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or anywhere you want to go on the planet, be sure to check out MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi. Their signature service and expert advice will help clients maximize their vacation time and dollar. I use them for my personal travel when it's safe to do so. I use them for Coffee with Kenobi. And as we get closer and closer to, hopefully, another celebration in 2022, you can be sure that I will be talking to Becky Menken and the team at MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. There are certainly a number of excellent reasons to use MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. For one thing, their service is completely free to you. They are there to help you, to guide you, to help you with tips on getting into the parks. Where should I go as far as what day I'm going to be there? What rides are the smartest ones to check out first? What are some of the best dining opportunities, whether you're traveling alone, whether you're traveling with that someone special, whether you're traveling with your family or just with a bunch of your friends? They will take care of you. They are an amazing, amazing service. I cannot recommend them enough. Again, I use them for both my personal travel as well as for everything we do at Coffee with Kenobi. And I will certainly be using them for future trips to Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser one day, and so many more exciting opportunities. So whether you're going to go to Disney World, whether you're going to go to somewhere else on the planet, and hopefully someday Disneyland when that opens, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, the Coffee with Kenobi travel partner, is your one-stop shop. If you have any questions, be sure to ask me or go to our travel affiliate link, which can be found on our webpage, in the show notes, or all over social media. Thank you so much. You will have the best time, and please let us know about your great experiences with MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. We are back, and I want to talk about Topps and collecting nowadays. I mean, Rebel Base Card is such an amazing follow on social media. Greg is always so great and gracious, always pointing out other accounts to follow and letting us know when exciting new cards are coming out on the top Star Wars digital card trader collecting app. But before we get to the digital side of things, Greg, and Tom, you certainly can weigh on this as well. What is it like if I want to go and find Star Wars trading cards now?
I know if I am, there's many places to go get them. I don't really ever go to a hobby store for cards often anymore. In fact, in our area, the only hobby stores that carry cards are sports cards. And I've asked them, I've inquired about it, why they don't carry, the film cards or in particular Star Wars cards. I searched that out when we were collecting. There was a Rebels physical card set out. And I was really looking for, I only needed like 3 or 4 to finish my set. And I thought the best way to do that, is to go and like try to find someone to trade with. And they're like, we don't really have anyone that does that and blah, blah, blah. So really where I get my Star Wars cards, if I find physical ones, is, at a Walmart or a Target, which there's a part of me that's really sad about that. But there's also a side of me that's really happy about that, because that's a very general audience and you're reaching people who may or may not be fans of the movie, or may just stumble upon that card aisle that has Pokemon and Magic the Gathering and whatnot and some other trinkets and things of pop culture, and they might come across some of those cards. So I don't know. I'm not being critical by saying I find them in Target and Walmart. That's a good thing. But I just wish that there are more hobbyists to make it desirable for a store in our area. Because we live by a small city that I would think would have a market for something like this. But yeah, most certainly. I really don't have too much trouble finding physical cards these days.
But the sets themselves, Greg, it's not like, they have sets for the movies, but it just doesn't have the same feel. And part of it is because we're older, but they're bigger sets. They're much, much, much more expensive. Naturally, you don't have the gum, which I guess is a pro or a con, depending on how you want to look at it. But I don't know. I think the big challenge for me is, while the actual physical card themselves, the quality is extremely incredible. The images, the photography is just clearly outstanding and on another level. They're just very expensive now. I don't know. What do you think, Greg?
Well, one thing is that, it's funny to think that Topps as a gum company that was using cards originally to sell their gum. And then, of course, and that was the whole reason for the wax paper, was it's a better way to handle the gum, to keep it preserved to some extent. Not that it was really great once it got to you anyway. But yes, it's hard to look back when you see those packs, whether they're 15 cents, 25 cents, 40 cents, or what have you. And when you look at a pack of cards, you're lucky to find for, like a couple bucks or more. But, one thing, in order to keep, what I see with Topps and Star Wars over the years is, there's that break after the original sets in 1983. And then in 1993, when Marvel kind of gets into the game with the universe and whatnot, and highlighting art, Topps gets back into the game for the 15th anniversary of Star Wars with the Star Wars Galaxy sets, which really kind of start off, at that point, comics and card shops are really in their golden era. And so Topps is feeding into that direct market with those 93 Galaxy sets that really, for the 90s now, which I'm kind of going back into now because I was not in the States during that time, has been a fascinating read of all the different things that Topps was trying to do in order to sell cards, whether they were giving them a chrome look, whether they were making them wide, whether they make them 3D. They right up until the Phantom Menace, when you get those cards in 99. And then the following decade, you're getting into now what is kind of selling cards, which is, they call hits, where you're trying to pack an autograph or a sketch card, whereas in the 90s it was all about the holograms or different kinds of this or that, and then, to take another cue from, baseball and whatnot. So then as you get into where we are now, yes, you have these boxes that, you have basically two different splits. You have the boxes that go into your retail stores, your Target or Walmart, or your hobby shops, which are geared towards, the higher end collector, the collector who are looking for those hits. And they'll buy entire boxes, whereas as a kid, we were buying them by the pack. And to a certain extent, you can still do that. Although, and I know that, we could, I will be spending a whole episode coming up because if you'd asked me how you bought cards this time last year versus this year, the things have really, really changed. And I don't necessarily want to kind of, completely dominate this, but, we come at a time now where, we've been in the pandemic for a while. And then, we've had a perfect storm in the sports card world where a lot of young talent, a lot of speculators, a lot of, pent up folks rediscovering collections have basically driven prices up and knocked supply down. And even going back into eBay. And so now it's, if someone's wanting to get back into the game, it's a lot tougher to find those cards. If anybody has done a Target or Walmart run recently and noticed that for some reason it's a perfect time to get into Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh, because that's the only thing you're finding. Perfect time for Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, folks. Be the first kid on your block because that's all you got now. I mean, like I said, I'm joking, and I could go into much more detail about it. I want to bore both of you and your audience, but it is fascinating how just in a short period of time, what was a pretty routine stuff for me to talk about in my show now becomes much more interesting to go over and cover.
Well, and that's all excellent food for thought. I knew there was a good reason I had you on the show talking about this stuff. And see, Greg does this all the time on the Roll Base Card, which is one of the best Star Wars podcasts out there. You absolutely must subscribe if you aren't doing so already. Now, let's do a quick transition. Let's talk about the digital side of things. When I first saw the app years ago, that Star Wars, you could get Star Wars cards from Topps, but they were on your phone. I thought, well, why would I do this? Because I don't actually have the cards. I can just look at them on my phone. It's just a picture. And then I opened the pack and I heard the sound and I heard R2-D2 and I saw the images and I saw I could get credits every single day. And I learned about this collecting frenzy that takes over and you can trade with your friends. And I thought, we have really, really got something special here. And it's transitioned over into, Major League Baseball and Marvel and just about everything under the sun now. It's a really fantastic way to do it. So, Tom, I think it's fair to say that you are something of an aficionado of the digital side of things. Is that accurate?
Well, that or a junkie, one of the two.
I was trying to be nice. That's probably more accurate.
I'll take aficionado. Next time someone criticizes me, I'm just trying to keep up my status of being aficionado.
That's right.
But oh my gosh, this has really consumed my life. And Dan, I blame it on you because you and me and Corey were at the Indiana Comic-Con when we first, I don't know, I think you knew about it a few days before that, but that was the first weekend that this app was available, I believe.
Yeah.
And so you were like, Tom, you got to download this. And so I did. And I had the same skeptical feelings you did until the same experience, really. When that first pack opened up and I was looking at a Star Wars card on my phone and I could click on it and see the back and the images looked great. And I was like, dude, this is, this is awesome. Still a little like, but how, so the question comes down to how long is this going to, how long will these cards be available to me? And I have to say, I'm rather surprised and shocked that here, however many years later, I mean, what was that, 2015? 15?
Yep.
So we're looking 6 years ago, probably this spring, that this has been going on. And so they're beautiful. And yes, you're right. There's a host of these apps, and I'm trying to open mine up right now. So I've got Bunt, Star Wars, Marvel, I have Disney, I have Slam, and Greg, there's Walking Dead.
Yes.
And I know that they lost the license to the NFL, so Bunt or Huddle is gone.
There was also a UFC one, which I think is probably the only one I never downloaded.
That's the one that's Slam. Slam is UFC.
Oh, Slam. No, Slam is WWE.
No, that's WWE. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Wrestling, as we say.
Wrestling.
Yeah.
But yeah, you also have what you said, Disney, Here, I'm going to have to go in. Yeah, you have Disney Skate, which is the NHL one, which they just revved back up.
Oh, yeah.
Kick, which is the soccer one. But yeah, you're right. They lost the Huddle license last year, although I've been collecting the base on it, and then the UFC one, which I forget what it is. They're actually going to merge those into an archive so that you can still see the collections, but you won't have access to the app. That's something they just announced here recently.
So I'm glad to hear that, because if and when, I mean, I'm sure it's, well, I don't know, maybe if and when these were to go defunct, as those two have, it's nice to hear that they have a method, or now they have at least a basis as to how can people continue to enjoy their collections.
That is good. That's such a big part of, I think, why the Star Wars app is so important and so exciting for collectors. I mean, now I think it can be daunting, but people like you, Greg, are so good about welcoming new people into the fold. Could you give us kind of a very brief synopsis of how the app works and how people can get involved in it?
Well, certainly. I was opening up while Tom was talking and noticed that I'd had a trade from our good friend Frank Mulder and Ross Holleben that I should accept. This will be, by the time this comes out, they definitely will be. But in going back to when people, I think a lot of people have those reservations, Dan, when they talk about why would I want something digitally I can't hold. But I kind of think it is first and foremost as a game where it's something that your phone is always with you, and something where you can take your a certain amount of your collection with you. And I think there are different ways to play this, but essentially, Topps will give you a little bit of currency, in-app currency every day, different times a day, and they'll also give you what's nice now is that they kind of do a lot better job of giving you, free cards daily. So, although you can spend money in the app, and none of us will ever let my wife know how much I've spent in the app. But this app, but you can spend if you want to, which I think just appeals also to the folks who treat this a little differently, or just kind of want to go, I want to have a little more skin in the game. But essentially you'll go in there and you'll launch the app. You can click on and get your free credits. You can go to a store then and purchase packs, and they'll have different types of themes and sets going on at any given time. They'll have weekly drops. They used to call them marathons, where you'd have to go and they'll release this one card of this one set every week on a certain day, and you can chase that. They allow you to connect. You can find other players in the app, and you can trade with them if you want to. Which is really nice. And I think that, one of the things we've tried to do, and, Frank is huge, a huge help on this, is try to foster that community of going, in the feed, you can find people and you can say, I have duplicates of certain cards, or they call dupes. And you can say, hey, look at dupes, trade dupes for needs. Or, because the cards themselves will, just like in the physical sense, have certain odds, and some of them are easier to get. Some of them are very rare to get. And, you try to kind of build this trade of trying to figure out what's fair in this case. Some cards will have a card count or a low card count. One thing that I've really enjoyed recently is that in the last couple of years, they've really been trying to feature some original art. Kevin Johns or Derek Laufman, they had some sets just for St. Patrick's Day where they had some original art in there, which was incredibly cool. And it's also fun because some of the artists as well, Brandon Bernard, who is the Topps graphic designer for Star Wars Card Trader, also very active on Twitter. I've had him on the show. And it's really fun when you can get Topps to engage with you on that. And like I said, it's a fun game. I like collecting. I'll put in, if there's something I really want, it's like buying a cup of coffee or something, going, you know what? It's a fixed cost. I know that these cards are digital, just like my music collection. That if someone is a Spotify user, if they're paying for Spotify Premium or something like this, like, what, we're kind of paying for the license. And so whereas older folks, we still have that, we still have that desire for tangible items. A lot of the younger generations, they're used to paying for access to, and they can get whatever they want. So in which case, this is a secondary library for me. Sometimes it's nice to go back and look at sets. sometimes it's fun just to have that daily interaction with, where if I'm busy at work and I don't have time to pull out my bind of cards, I can always go in there and see what's happening. And then, it's fun when you see those drops, or like you said, Dan, something comes out. I really love that they were doing these voting where they had we're going to put this bracket almost like its own Sweet 16 type thing. And you're going to vote on who do you think who's the card you want, Captain Teva or, Dutch for whatever. And then I'll put it out there like, hey, who are you picking? And it's nice to engage with folks and go, who are you picking and why? And then you'll have this nice little conversation going the whole day, and people kind of come in whenever they kind of, they're engaging, and they log in there and they can see, oh, okay, I'm doing this guy, or I like this guy or this gal or whatever. And that's what's really fun about it. And I think that over the years is what keeps me interested, is that just seeing the folks out there who they don't feel like they're just kind of trading and collecting on their own. They're just like, oh, these other people kind of like it as well. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the hardcore collector. It might be someone going, yeah, I log in every now and then, I'll send somebody stuff, but it's, that's what makes the game and the app that much more fun, is to communicate with other players. And then, I find I'll be in Bunt and, oh, here's a cool cup. Well, I'm going to send that over to Tom, or I'll send it over to Dan, cause I know they like the cups. Or, if you see a cool card that somebody else likes, hey, I know you're a big fan of, you're collecting that, and it's really fun to kind of help somebody really help and continue their enjoyment of that particular character or that particular card or whatnot.
Last summer, Mason and I were all over this, and every day first thing we'd wake up, he'd run in, he'd say, "Good morning, Daddy," and he'd give me a hug, and he'd open up, he'd say, "Can we look at the cards?" And he'd open them up, and we'd look at them, and we'd trade, and then he'd send Greg some insane like a green Ugnaught for an autograph. All right, let's go ahead and take a really quick break, and we'll return with a little bit more from Tom and Greg. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
As we near the end of the show today, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a cup of coffee with me, and for helping to spread the word about our Star Wars family we've got here at Coffee with Kenobi. Be sure to tune in Monday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/live or www.facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, and have a cup of coffee, tea, or any beverage of your choosing with me as we continue the conversation. To join us in the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and share your Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community and be part of the conversation, talk about this week's show, or just talk about some Star Wars. We have a lot of fun, and you'll make some new friends, as well as catch up with longtime friends along the way. I also want to thank all of the new and longtime members of the CWK Alliance, and let you know how much I appreciate your help and encouragement. If you want to join the CWK Alliance, go to www.cwkalliance.com and sign up today. Not only will you help out Coffee with Kenobi, but you also get access to CWK Pour-Over, the exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else. It's a great way to support and help out the show, and 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to support the incredibly important work they are doing to help these brave children and their families. Plus, contributors at the CWK All-Star level can watch a video podcast of CWK Pour-Over hosted by me, Tom Gross, and Corey Clubb. Feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions. In addition to being part of the community on Facebook, please don't forget to visit our website at www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. If you have a question for me or just want to share your thoughts on the air, feel free to email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com, and I'll share them on the show. You can also connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zaire, MRZEHR, or on Instagram at DanZareCWK. There are also a lot more ways to connect with me and Coffee with Kenobi on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. Check us out on Pinterest, or subscribe to our Coffee with Kenobi YouTube channel. On our YouTube channel, you can find Facebook Live video, different interviews throughout the years, highlights of video coverage throughout the Coffee with Kenobi history, and the audio podcast itself. You can order my book, The Star Wars Book, which I co-wrote with Lucasfilm's Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million, Walmart, or anywhere books are sold. You can also find my writing on Coffee with Kenobi's website, as well as StarWars.com, where I am an official blogger there, and on IGN, where I contribute occasionally to articles about Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. If you are considering starting a podcast or a blog, let me know how I can help you get started and make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out danzmedia.com and we can get the process started. I am also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. I want to inspire you to be inspired so you can take that first step into a larger world. Thanks as always to our Coffee with Kenobi sponsors, especially MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, our travel partner and your one-stop shop for all things Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or anywhere on the planet you want to go on your vacation. Please go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel to book your magical vacation and help support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. If you like the show, please tweet out that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. And if the Force is especially with you, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Every review makes a huge difference and helps to spread the word, and I can't thank you enough for your help, for your support, and your friendship. I love so much being a part of this wonderful Star Wars community, and I can't thank you enough for all that you do for me and Coffee with Kenobi. Grateful, of course, for your time and sharing your talents and your enthusiasm for Star Wars and Topps and these digital cards, because I think they're bringing back a lot of memories for people. And Greg, you do such a great job, as I've said, on the Rebel-based card of fostering that. Please let everybody know they can find your show and continue the conversation with you on social media.
Oh, Dan, I just want to thank you. You've always been so gracious to have me on. And like I said, Mason's a baller. Make no mistake. He is tough in the app. But at any rate, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram's where I kind of got my start. Twitter I've been kind of in the last year been focusing a little more in there in some cases. But you can find me at Rebel Base Card there. And we do also do the podcast, where if you, in most of the major podcast apps, you can just look for the Rebel Base Card podcast, and you should be able to pull up the show there. If you are wanting to get back into collecting, show number 15 is one I did for, like kind of the collector's show to kind of give everybody kind of an equal footing. And I'm going to be revisiting that because of just talking about how things are now. And some interesting and creative ways, I think, to kind of tackle that if you kind of want to get back in. I'm kind of getting excited about doing that. And we also have a couple of milestones this year, if you can believe it. And we're going to be coming up later this year, 25 years of Shadows of the Empire, which is going to be, which is really amazing. And that's something I've been, as someone who wasn't around for that release because I was overseas, revisiting that whole franchise, that movie without a movie, is really amazing. As well as Star Wars Topps Finest was also hitting their 25th anniversary here. They came out in May of '96. So right when the Bad Batch is coming out, and Finest was basically, we talked about that run of art, celebrating art, and some of those '90s sets, the Galaxy sets and whatnot, Master Visions. Is really great because there's a lot of original art that was really focused, and it's something in talking to sketch artists and whatnot. I really love seeing that when you see Star Wars through other people's eyes. In the Carter app, I keep my old one, which is Corn-Fed Tech, and it's across all of them. Sadly, even we talk about Topps, but even checking out, Panini, which has Blitz and Dunk, which are their NFL and NBA ones. I've been kind of getting into those just to see not only how the other half lives, but it's interesting to see everybody's different takes on the digital card trading apps. And then, like I said, with Disney Plus and WandaVision, seeing if that spills back over in the Marvel Collect and whatnot. All these different things, just there's so much fresh stuff going on. And on the podcast, not only do we talk about cards and card collecting, but I also talk to folks in the community. As you saw, we had Mark from Fantatrax on recently.
Mark Newbold, yeah.
Mark Newbold just brings the goods, and this is his second time on, and I have to make it an annual thing because he just knows everything. It's amazing. But having people like Anna Perez, that's the latest episode. That she's a pin and patch collector, great person in the community. She works for Project Stardust, that great female-run fan site that has a bunch of different contributors. It's really great to hear all these different stories and to kind of expand it. So, yes, I talk about cards, but the community as well, which is, it's just what Daniel Lowe says, an embarrassment of riches. He sometimes likes to call it, and that's what's always kind of fun to get on here and just chew your ear off about this stuff. And I think you just have to kind of come in with this curiosity and just this desire. I'm like, man, let's just find out about all this stuff, and we could do this. I just want to keep doing this, and so like I said, you can find me there. The show notes I usually put on the rebelbasecard.com usually after the show posts, and there's links in there if you want to look for like shopping resources or supplies, cool podcasts. Now I got to go back and figure out if I've made sure you're on that list. It's a long list I need to keep back onto. But there's just so much stuff out there. You feel like, like you said, this could be a second job. But it's a labor of love. And like I said, if you guys, the last thing I'll leave you guys, look for Abram books in Amazon, because not only can you find the original ones, but they have one on the Star Wars Galaxy as well as the wide vision. I wish the camera wasn't off, because some of these are great. And even if you can't find the cards, or if you only have a few and you don't want to look back, to see pages of these cards. And you talked about Steve Sansweet. Just lastly, I know you have to cut me off, right? Steve Sansweet did a lot in those kind of like that late 90s, right around just before the Phantom Menace. He did some of the content for the backs of some of those cards. And nothing I found more interesting was to find that he'd actually wrote some of the text on the back of them. And that's one thing. If I ever get that man on, I really am dying to ask him about it.
Oh, that's so cool. So cool. Well, thank you, Greg, so much for all of that and for everything you do for the community. And Tom, where can people reach out to you and continue the conversation with you?
Absolutely. First, I do want to say, Greg, you are, and Dan, you've mentioned this, and I want to just reinforce it, is Greg, you have really made a community out of this, and we know the strength of communities and positivity in the communities that we build. And you never mentioned the one piece you use to bring people together, and that's your hashtag Card Squadron, which I think is awesome. You just get into Twitter and do the hashtag Card Squadron and look at all the great stuff and all the notices that you give of, hey, free packs on Monday and this and all that kind of stuff. And one of my favorite things that you do is when someone reaches out to you and they're new to Star Wars Card Trader, you always do a call out to Card Squadron and say, hey, so-and-so is new, throw them something, see if you can help them out, build their collection really quickly. And nothing brings me more joy than seeing that and then sending someone 9 cards that are from from 2015 or 2016, and something that they would probably have no access to, just in collecting, or wouldn't know to have access to those. And so I want to thank you for that you have built such an awesome community. And so one place you can reach out and continue the conversation with me is I have a blog, Seeking Positivity in the Galaxy. I spent several weeks at the end of 2020 talking about digital card trading. I had a 3-part session on that going through November, and then in December to the end of January, a series of some of my top 5 cards from 2020. So if you want to see those lists or kind of get a little bit more of my thoughts on digital card trading in the community, check that out. It's Seeking Positivity in the Galaxy. You can reach out to me on Twitter. It's at Draftline, DRAFTLINE. If you want to hop on and start Star Wars Card Trader and find me there, my username is BattleJump, BATTLEJUMP. And so don't ask me where that came from. I have no idea. It came out of one of those moments where I'm like, oh, I need to have a username. Okay, how about this? So Battle Jump and Star Wars Card Trader. And then, of course, you can drop me an email, tomg@coffeewithkenobi.com.
And of course, CWK Pour-Over as well.
Oh, that's right. How did I forget that? We only do that every week, right?
Yeah, it's a little podcast to do for our Patreon page. If you're a member of the CWK Alliance, you can hear me, Tom Gross, and Core Club every single week. Well, guys, thanks again so much for being on Coffee with Kenobi.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
A lot of great food for thought there, talking about and reflecting on the nostalgia and the fun of the top Star Wars packs. Man, so many fun memories. Well, I want to thank all of you for making memories for me and for all of us in the Star Wars community with your positive attitude and interactions with us, both on Coffee with Kenobi's Facebook Live every Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, as well as in the CWK Cafe, our exclusive Facebook group. It's actually not exclusive. Just go in and request to join in, and I will certainly add you. And you can have a family-friendly, positive conversation with so many like-minded Star Wars fans. We have a great time. And be sure, even though normally the show on Facebook Live is every Monday night, this week is a special one. So the show comes out today on Thursday, March 25th. And then this Sunday is a one-time special, March 28th, Sunday, March 28th, at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. We will be doing a very special Facebook Live from an undisclosed location that is going to be a lot of fun, a great surprise. We've got some special guests, some different perspectives. It's going to be a blast, so be sure to join us if you can this Sunday, March 28th at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Coffee with Kenobi's Facebook Live for a very special show. There will be no show on Monday this week because of our special show on Sunday, March 28th at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. I look forward to seeing all of you there. Have a great week and weekend. Remember, this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along. Move along.
Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Featuring sound effects and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. The Aces of the New Republic have one final chance to defeat the darkness of Shadow Wing in Victory's Price by Alexander Freed. The thrilling conclusion to the Star Wars Alphabet Squadron trilogy. Available now wherever audiobooks are sold.